Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano 2. Here are a few of my post-fight thoughts. Now, I can't do a bona fide post-fight analysis simply because I was not able to view the fight in its entirety while it was going on live because of the buffering issues from Netflix. And secondly, I've been searching for the full fight on YouTube, but have yet to find it. So I'm basing what I have to say on simply the highlights that have been made available. Okay, so in that sense, I'd like to identify three themes that I felt were consistent throughout the entire 10 two-minute round fight. First is that in spite of the fact that Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano is a classic righty versus lefty matchup, with Katie Taylor being the orthodox stance fighter and Amanda Serrano being the southpaw stance fighter, the women did not engage in a sort of jab cancellation back and forth. Now, quite often in a righty-lefty matchup, you'll see that where both fighters just kind of consistently stick their jab hand out and cancel each other's jabs out with their opponent, and it's almost like they're just sort of wasting motion, playing patty cake, trying to set something up, but not really, because in order to set up a punch, your jab has to have some bad intentions behind it, and that little patty cake game has zero bad intentions. So, for example, take a look at Naoya Inoue's last fight. That did happen in the opening rounds. So credit to Katie and Amanda for just not falling into that trap and immediately getting down to business. So instead of doing that jab cancellation game, both women were looking for hard counter reverse punch shots. So Katie Taylor's looking for a hard counter right punch, and Amanda's looking for the hard counter left. And both women were successful in landing those punches, along with 4 and 5 punch combinations, which was fantastic. So throughout the fight, it was highly technical boxing combinations being thrown by both fighters. Second theme is that throughout the fight, Katie Taylor was the fighter who was moving either laterally or backwards, while Amanda Serrano was the one that was advancing. Now, this was an interesting tactic for Katie Taylor to adopt, because typically when you're moving backwards, or you're moving into the ropes, or moving yourself even into the corner, you're putting yourself in a less superior position. But I think the reason Katie was doing this was to sort of negate Amanda's boxing movement. So why would you want to try to outbox the boxer, right? So Katie does the exact opposite and makes herself a stationary target at times. That means she knows exactly where Amanda's going to be. Amanda's going to be right in front of her, trying to just land her shots on Katie while Katie's in the corner. And this allowed Katie to try to just play the counter shot game. Also, by Katie being stationary, her feet are planted, she's sitting down on her punches, and she's able to set up those hard shots because she's not trying to land a punch on the fly. Her feet are planted. So this is a very advanced tactic. It's not something I would advise, really. You'd have to be super advanced. Like, this is high black belt level stuff for a fighter to say put themselves in the corner or put themselves on the ropes intentionally. But again, I'm guessing that the reason Team Taylor decided to adopt that tactic was because they know that Amanda Serrano's a great classic boxer and has great boxing movement. So if you make yourself stationary, Amanda has no reason to move around like that. Now, the third theme I saw throughout this fight was that Katie Taylor adopts more of the brawler stance, whereas Amanda Serrano has more of a classic boxing stance, meaning in the case of the southpaw, Amanda has her torso very much turned. She's at an angle to Katie. She's got her hands up in that sort of classic boxing stance. Whereas Katie's bent over a little more at the waist, and she's, at times she is advancing and then would fall into a clinch. Now the fact that Katie's bent over at the waist, Amanda Serrano's corner's complaining that she's leading with her head. Well, yes, if you're gonna bend over at the waist a little bit and crouch forward, yes, you are leading with your head, and you should be keeping your chin down, which means your forehead is forward. Now that quite possibly led to all those either intentional or unintentional head clashes. Was it actually the contact of Katie's forehead against Amanda's eyebrow that opened up that cut? Again, I couldn't see that. I mean, I could guess that yes, it probably was, but in all fairness, Katie was landing an awful lot of lead left hooks to Amanda's, to this side of Amanda's face, so that didn't hurt or didn't help in terms of opening up a cut on Amanda's eyebrow. Now, to her credit, Amanda also landed really nice left body shots and left uppercuts. That seemed to be a really consistently landing, good punch for Amanda Serrano. Whereas Katie, I thought, was brilliant to start with that lead left hook, because in a righty-lefty matchup, that's one case where a lead left hook is a terrific punch to open up with. Now, one thing I was not so thrilled with were two people on the desk decided to use the term "rock'em sock'em robots," and quite frankly, that's one of my pet peeves in terms of boxing commentary, because it just implies that two people are winging at each other. It doesn't give them any credit for their technical prowess. And this was a highly technical fight. I mean, Katie and Amanda were both throwing nice, tight 4 and 5 punch combinations. They were not playing that give and go game where it's like, okay, you go, I'll cover up. Now I go, you cover up, and that type of back and forth. They were punching with each other, trying to look for openings between each other's shots. There's no downtime in this fight, at least not that I could see. So to use the term rock and top robots is really to discredit both women in their efforts and in the amount of time they put into honing their craft to the highest level. Now, a second bone of contention I have with the commentary was somebody called or noted the fact that, oh, I really like these 2-minute rounds because it just gives us a lot of action. And I would argue, isn't it about time that women fought 3-minute rounds? And shouldn't women's title fights be 12 3-minute rounds? That's 36 minutes of action versus 10 2-minute rounds, which is 20 minutes of action. That's a little bit over a 6-round fight if it's 6 3-minute rounds, right? It's like 6.5 3-minute rounds equals a female title fight. I think in this case it didn't help because 2-minute rounds, there's not enough sort of time for any attrition to take place. It may not sound like a significant point, but those 60 seconds from the 2-minute mark to the 3-minute mark, that 60 seconds makes a difference, especially if you're somebody who likes to go to the body. If you do that earlier on in the round, sure, that other person might make it through the 2-minute mark, but if there's another 60 seconds, in that last 30 seconds, that might actually take its toll, and you can, elevate your pace from the 2:30 mark to the 3-minute mark, and that can make a difference in how the fight plays out. So I disagree. I think if there's a third match, both women should ask for 12 3-minute rounds if they feel that that's something they're willing to train for. Now that said, do we want to see or do we need to see a Taylor Serrano 3? Well, technically speaking, the third match won't be a rubber match, simply because Taylor's won both of these fights, albeit via a very close decision, although unanimous, right, in both cases, I think. But the fact that Serrano is signed to whom she's signed with, right, and Katie Taylor's with Eddie Hearn, it looks like that could happen again. We could see Serrano Taylor 3 again as a co-main event for, you know, Mr. YouTuber, because let's face it, Serrano Taylor 2 saved the whole card in terms of boxing action, because the main event was not a boxing fight, it was a scripted event. I'll call it an event. And from what I've not heard about any of the undercard fights, the lack of noise about that tells me that the undercard was somewhat lackluster, or it was all just gimme fights where you know, the A-side male fighter was set up with a B-side fighter that they're just gonna use to build their record, whereas Serrano Taylor 2 was a valid fight with plenty of action. So given that the person in the main event, who's also the promoter, is going to continue on their path of boxing clout, or whatever you want to call it, I think they know that they need a valid boxing fight to save their whole card, and that would definitely be Serrano Taylor 3. Should both women agree to meet for a third time. Now, question regarding Serrano's cut, and what were the clashes of heads intentional on the part of Katie Taylor? Well, again, because I could not see the entire footage of this fight, I really can't give a definitive answer on that. Although, I mean, from the sounds of it, it does seem like that cut was opened up by a clash of Katie Taylor's head against Amanda Serrano's eyebrow. However, I will say this, I do not understand why Amanda Serrano's cut man did not close that fight prior to her doing the post-fight interview. I mean, that cut was open like a small mouth on her eyebrow, and that's just unforgivable in my opinion as far as her cut man's duties go. All that person has to do is to pinch that shut and hold it there, really squeeze it for, you know, a few seconds, and that cut should close up at least temporarily. But you don't want the cut being open like a mouth like that, because it's just going to be harder to close in the long run. You don't want stuff getting in that open gap in Amanda's eyebrow. You don't need germs and whatnot getting in there. Just you know, that whoever the cutman was, I felt that they needed to do a better job than they did, especially post-fight. I mean, closing that cut should be priority over her speaking to the camera. Now that said, what did you guys like about that fight? What were your favorite moments in Taylor Serrano 2? And do you want to see a third fight between both women? If you do want to see Taylor Serrano 3, do you think it should be 12 3-minute rounds, or do you want to see another 10 2-minute round fight? If you've been enjoying these breakdowns, please do hit the subscribe button. Please hit the bell so you know when we post the next video. And you're always welcome to leave a super thanks. Much appreciated. Please let me know all your thoughts in the comments below, and I look forward to reading them. Thank you.